All right, having surgery during this time period is totally different from any other time. Uh, the first things first is they shut down hospitals for a very long time. Well, not a very long time, a few months, and only allowed mandatory life-threatening surgeries or life-saving surgeries. So mine, because it was a cyst on my ovary and it wasn't life-threatening, was an elective surgery. So it was put on the back burner and I couldn't get it done until June. So before you can go in for surgery, though, you have to make sure that you have a COVID test. So you set up an appointment with the doctor's office or with the hospital, actually, and you go in and they do the test. So I set up my appointment, I think it was Thursday or Friday before my surgery. I pile my kids in the car, we drive up there, and I'm nervous because I don't know what to expect. I hate needles, but of course it's not a needle, so I don't know what I was thinking. But I get there and the lady's like, lay your head back on the headrest, and she takes this thing that looks like a very long Q-tip. This doesn't look like a Q-tip, but a Q-tip, and she sticks it in your nose, and she sticks it all the way to like about right here, and she wiggles it around, and you have to breathe through it, and then it's over. So it doesn't hurt, it's just incredibly uncomfortable. Like it's on the verge of hurting, but not really hurting. So I would probably rather have that done than get a flu shot, but I don't like shots. So because, again, of COVID, surgeries are not done the same way. You cannot have visitors. No one can come with you. So that brings on like a whole different feeling of anxiety. Like you're already nervous that you have to go in for surgery. I was nervous that I had to go in for surgery. And not necessarily the surgery, but the idea of being put to sleep. I had never been put to sleep before. I've had this type of surgery twice with my kids. A C-section is a type of laparotomy. So like I know what that's like. I've had them, I've recovered from them, I'm perfectly fine. But I did not get put to sleep for those. I slept through them because I'm a wuss when it comes to medicine. Like as soon as they gave me the surgical epidural, I was knocked out, totally asleep. But that's because I went to sleep. And so there's this anxiety about being put to sleep because of course you have things to live for and you want to wake up. So if you've never been put to sleep, like that's a kind of a really strange feeling to wrap your head around. And then to know that I was going to be there by myself just kind of added on an extra layer of anxiety. And then not having anyone there to like fully understand what I was going through was a whole nother added layer of emotion and anxiety. So I had to go in. My surgery was scheduled for, I think, 8 a.m. So I had to go into the hospital at 5 a.m., be dropped off at the door, wear a mask, and I had my backpack with my change of clothes and stuff, and you go in, you're directed to the registration desk, and they register you and get you set up. Then the nurse from the back comes out, calls my name, Stephanie. Okay. So then I immediately start shaking and crying like a baby, right? Because I'm already like just super emotional anyway. Like that's just kind of my nature. But crying. So she's in her sweet little southern voice, baby, what's wrong with you? You okay? No, ma'am, I'm not okay. I am not okay. She says, well, what are you having done today? And I was explaining to her, and I was like, through the sobbing, I don't know if I'm going to have a hysterectomy, but I have this cyst. It's got to come out, and the doctor will see when she gets in there and figure out what needs to happen. So I don't know, and I don't want to go to sleep and all these things. So she, of course, assured me that I'd be perfectly fine, and the doctor was incredibly competent and gets me set up with my gown and brings me extra warm blankets because I don't know if they bring them fresh out the dryer or what, but she was like, I'm going to bring you 2 because I feel like you need it. So she brought me 2 really warm blankets. And then my nurse walks in. Her name was Stephanie. And she's the sweetest woman, just all the jokes and everything. So she's making sure that my nerves are being calmed down. We talk about like that I'm a teacher, and her kids actually went to the school where I taught. So that, that put me at ease a little bit. And then in comes the anesthesiologist, who is very formal, right? Everybody up until this point has been, like family. Like they just come in, laughing it up. And the anesthesiologist comes in and she's very formal. This is what we're going to do, and this time, and blah, 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 blah. And my assistant is going to be Brad. Okay. So then she leaves, and I'm nervous all over again because now it's starting to get real, right? Like, she's just made me nervous. And my doctor comes in, she speaks, she says, hello, everything is good. And then another nurse, Deborah, walks in, and she's looking at my charts. And she says, wait a minute. We've set up the surgical room for a laparoscopy, not a laparotomy. We've got to change the room. And then that makes me nervous because at that moment, Brad, the anesthesiologist, assistant doctor, whoever he was, but his name is Brad, he walks in with his syringe of sleepy juice is what he called it. He was like, who's ready for sleepy juice? And I start crying all over again. I'm not. Like, they're not. The doctor isn't ready. Like, the room isn't ready. Y'all got to stop, right? You're about to put me to sleep, and I don't know if I'm going to wake up or not. Like, what if I don't wake up? And he looked at me, and of course he talks, and he says, that won't be today. He says, my only job today is to make sure that you wake up. And he says, I'm incredibly good at my job, and I love what I do. And of course I calmed down immediately, and somehow we started talking about barbecue, right? So all the nurses and things are in there, and we're talking, and Deborah comes back in, and she says, I think maybe 30 minutes later, she says, well, the room is ready now. And he says, well, are you ready to go to sleep? I was like, I guess, you know. And he puts in the syringe, and I remember watching the TV and still talking about barbecue, and that was it. Like, I try to think back. I still cannot remember anything other than talking about barbecue and how he got his degrees and watching the TV. And after that, the next thing I remember is waking up in the, I guess, post-op room or whatever, but it's like a bigger space and there are beds everywhere. That's all I remember. The next thing I remember is being wheeled up to my room and having the nurses shift me from the transportation bed to my room bed. And that was sometime maybe late. I don't know because I slept through most. Anyway, it may have been afternoon or late afternoon. I don't know. But the more difficult part was being there in that room alone and having to sleep and in and out of sleepiness and having someone come in and check things and go back out and pressing the medicine button. And I had one issue with a nurse who, I don't know if she was going through a bad breakup and having to check on her boyfriend or what, but she wasn't coming in as frequently as she needed to. And long story short, by the end of the night, it was probably sometime around 5 o'clock, I remember waking up because I had to call the charge nurse to come in because I needed help and I couldn't find my nurse. And just crying and yelling and screaming and crying, and you aren't here for me, and I need an advocate, and nobody in my family's here with me, and what have you been doing? And tears and snot everywhere and high emotions. And I think I fell asleep maybe mid-sentence, but that was it. After that, every nurse thereafter was perfect. And then that nurse I never saw again. During this time, it's incredibly nerve-wracking to go in by yourself and to be alone. But in retrospect, looking back and relying on people and their expertise brings some sort of comfort. Like, these people do this every single day. They put people to sleep and they wake people up, and and it works, and so I felt very well taken care of. And I think that if you have to go into surgery during a time like this, where you have to go in by yourself, making sure that proper supports with the staff are in place so that they take good care of you is probably one of the best things you could do. And when you're able to speak, get to know your the people who are assisting you, your nurses, the charge nurse, the doctors, so that you don't feel so alone. I was only there for a full day after I was there, of course, all day Tuesday because of surgery, and then all day there Wednesday because with the laparotomy, because they do the incision, and I guess I don't know if they pull out your intestines or what. I assume they do in order to reach things. But your intestines start to, like, they just lock up. They don't want to do anything. And so you cannot leave until you pass gas. So all day Wednesday, that was my goal. My only goal was just to pass even an itty bitty bit of gas, right? And so the nurses gave me, no, I came off the medicine, off the pain medicine, lots and lots of water, and they made this delicious ginger ale tea, which is just ginger ale in like Lipton tea bags, warmed up. I probably had like 40 ounces of that. I tried to not eat as much. Like, I really could not eat much. I think I would nibble on little things like soup, broth, because you're really not hungry after surgery like that. I think I tried eating, what's that stuff, Jell-O. I had a cookie because I can't resist cookies. But in midday, like, they put me in the ward with, or I'm going to say ward, it's not a psych ward, but like the hallway with the women who had just had babies, because the surgery is similar. So I'm on the hallway. It's all these women who have had babies, a little baby nursery. And I walk all around the place, and you have to wear a mask when you're walking. And the final straw was like all the women who had had babies were leaving. Like, the husbands are there packing up baby stuff, and they're walking out, and there's me, the only person left on the hallway. And all I'm trying to do is pass gas, right? Probably TMI for some people, but the only thing I'm trying to do is pass gas. So my nurse comes in, and she's like, listen, we're going to try one more thing. And she gives me like 16 ounces of prune juice, warmed up prune juice, and a little bit of apple juice. She says, you've got to chug it. Like, you've got to drink the whole thing right now in front of me. So I'm sitting there chugging prune juice. And because I was on the heavy pain meds, like, I could move around a little bit more. So I'm like down on the floor trying to do like yoga poses and move around. And one magical moment happens, and I pass gas. And I walk out into the hallway, my arms raised like Rocky, and I was like, it's time to go. So my nurse is clapping, the other nurses are clapping, and it was great. That was it. And so, yeah, it wasn't a terrible experience. I actually kind of liked the peace and quiet once, surgery day was over. And I kind of like having someone bring me food and wait on me hand and foot and help walk me to the bathroom. Not that I need that, but it was pretty cool. Not so bad.